Hi guys, thanks for coming on today, appreciate it. Basically guys, I want to cover off on emerging situation in Australia is the major issue in East Asia Pacific. And it's not dissimilar to what happened in America at the beginning of the COVID, and that's social unrest is developing in Australia. Anti-government protests occurred yesterday and again today in the capital in Canberra, and they surrounded the National Press Club, were very vocal where the Prime Minister was due to speak. Perth also saw demonstrations. Now, Australia's seen numerous protests from several interest groups and communities against the government's COVID-19 management policies over the last year. And that is a combination of reasons. There's the perceived strictness of the policies, there's mandating of vaccines for various sectors, but overall it's been a very sloppy process in Australia. They bought the wrong vaccine, they rolled it out very slowly, they had to get a military general to come in and rescue a system that every Australian pays 3 to 4% of their salary all their life to get so-called free medical, even though they haven't worked out they paid 3% every month of their entire life. And then there was paranoia that the medical systems that everyone's paid for hadn't been developed and could be easily overloaded. So there was this policy to 0 cases, and then suddenly New South Wales and then Victoria went from wanting 0 cases to wanting to open up. In New South Wales, that occurred overnight with a change of Premier. So there's just been a basic frustration in the government's response, but also their lack of communication and their lack of consistency. Also in North Asia, it's been pretty much about COVID. Today, Beijing officials sealed off several residential communities north of the city centre after cases were detected, and in Hong Kong, residents in parts of Kowloon City and Mong Kok were ordered to undergo compulsory testing after sewage samples tested positive for COVID. A lot of developments in Asia today, in Southeast Asia, but a particular interest is in Indonesia, where authorities said that 2 suspected Jemaah Islamiyah terrorists were arrested in South and Central Tapanuli in North Sumatra. They were arrested on January 29, and their arrests come ahead of a visit by President Joko Widodo to several parts of North Sumatra starting tomorrow. Thank you, Uday, if there's any questions. Otherwise, we'll roll on.
Thanks, Paul. I was glad to read that the Test and Go program has restarted in Thailand, so I'm looking forward to coming there at some point. But I'll move on with South Asia today. We had 1 assessed event and 11 other developments. So I want to quickly bring up a quick thing in India. Port workers and fishermen blocked a road to a private port in Chennai in Tamil Nadu. Now, this is a maritime hub. They demanded permanent employment and for the Adani group of companies not to expand the port that it was proposed to. Now, this is interesting because there's been a wave of protests against the privatization of various sectors, including shipping and steel, for instance. So businesses need to keep an eye out because these sort of demonstrations can have larger effects on supply chains. Now, the issue that I do want to talk about is an attack in Pakistan. So this is very interesting. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and the Islamic State of Pakistan both claimed an attack on a policeman in Rawalpindi, the sister city to the Islamabad, the capital. Now, this is the second time it has happened since December 2021. So this kind of suggests that there's an overlap in terror networks in some parts of Pakistan. Late last year, the TTP entered peace talks with the Pakistani government. Now, these failed, unsurprisingly, but it also pushed some TTP members to the Islamic State. And this is a situation that has mirrored what happened in Afghanistan with the Taliban and the Islamic State Khorasan. So the bottom line here is that it's a messy situation, and it seems like, as we have assessed in multiple reports, that the Taliban's takeover in Afghanistan has increased the risk profile in Pakistan. Paul or anyone, do you have any comments? If not, we can move over to Bassel.
No, I think just move on, thanks.
Thank you, Uday. So in the EMEA region today, we had around 31 developments. In the Middle East, one development that stood out was that at least 17 Israeli spy networks were busted by the Lebanese intelligence agency across several cities in the country. So, according to security sources, these networks were operating both locally and regionally. The key here was that some of the spy network members were not, they didn't know they were working for the Israeli government. They thought they were working for internationally organized agencies like the United Nations, and some of them knew that they were working with the Israeli government. The main goal was for the organization is to gather information about the Lebanese intelligence agency and the Iranian-backed Hezbollah militia. Do anyone have any questions?
So yeah, actually, Bassel. So what does this mean for Lebanon, and do you see any kind of blowback, whether in Israel or Lebanon?
Actually, because I'm originally from Lebanon, I don't think this is a big deal to the security issues that are now threatening the security landscape in Lebanon, especially with the ongoing deteriorating economic situation in the country. Also, this might help the Lebanese intelligence agency and Lebanon as a whole to deter the Israeli threat. I think without an economic improvement in the country, the Israeli threat is there. It's more culturally than it is like traditional war.
Thanks for that, Bassel.
Some other developments actually in the Middle East. I would like to also say about Syria. Israeli fighter jets carried out several airstrikes near the capital Damascus today. According to some also security sources, the airstrikes targeted Hezbollah and the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps ammunition warehouses near the capital. Off to you, Sitati.
Well, thank you, Bassel. In the case of Africa in today's roundup, we covered, or rather we assessed the expected severe thunderstorms and heavy rain in some or several southern African countries. And these thunderstorms and heavy rains are expected to be caused by the tropical cyclone Batsirrai, which is expected to last until February 4th. And just a little bit of a background is that last week, in the course of last week, the Southern African countries experienced Cyclone Anna, and about 70 people were killed and hundreds of others were displaced. And of course, among these countries that are expected to experience heavy, storms and across Southern Africa include Mauritius, Madagascar, Zimbabwe, Angola, South Africa, Botswana, and Namibia. However, among these countries, it's expected that Madagascar and Mauritius will experience most of the heavy rain and thunderstorms. And in fact, yesterday in Mauritius, especially in St. Brendan and Rodriguez towns, heavy rainfall was reported. And today morning, and also part of yesterday in central Madagascar, there were some floods which led to property damage in various parts or towns or areas in central Madagascar. At this point, I just want to prompt Michael Chudi what he thinks about the possible disruptions to that may result from, or that could result from these, heavy thunderstorms and rainfall. Chudi, what do you think about this?
Thank you, Sitati. In terms of impact, I think the major flashpoints will be disruptions to both local and international travel across the southern region. As you well know, South Africa specifically is a major international hub in Africa, with Johannesburg being, I believe, the second most busiest airport behind Addis Ababa International Airport. So we should see in the coming days some disruptions to travel, both international and local. In addition, increased power outages we saw in the last storm in Anna, how it affected Zambia and Zimbabwe and Mozambique. If that is to repeat throughout the rest of the week, we should see an increased death toll and a lot of property damage, and also deployment of disaster relief workers from international aid organizations should be. It's going to be a very interesting development across a region that is just rebounding from the recent, travel blockade that was put on most of Southern Africa.
Yeah, that's true, Chudi, and just perhaps to advise our clients that they could, continue monitoring the latest developments, and we are sure they could be sure that we are keeping our eyes on the latest developments as well, just in case there are any advisories or alerts to be issued for the impending cyclone Bassel in the Southern African countries. Thank you. So unless there's any other comment as well, I'll call upon again Chudi to proceed with one of the major developments in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Sitati. In Europe, we covered 8 developments. The major flashpoint being another storm affecting most of Western Europe, called Storm Corrie. It killed 4 people and caused multiple flight disruptions across Western Europe, affecting Belgium, France, the Netherlands, and the UK. They induced multiple power outages lasting several days over the weekend, and a major maritime incident in Holland where there was a collision between 2 ships, and the Dutch Coast Guard had to intervene and rescue over 8 members. We should expect increased disruptions to localized travel and international travel, including business activity, as a storm is expected to intensify over the coming days. Now, I'd like to get the opinion of Bassel. How would you assess the impact of the storm on the gradual lifting of COVID-related travel restrictions across Europe? As you're well aware, the continent has seen a sort of a pullback from is passing the peak of the Omicron virus, and countries in England, for instance, and Belgium have started to relax travel restrictions. Do you see the recent storm as put a damper on those travel developments?
Thank you, Chudi. Yes, exactly. I would see, as you said, because basically all the current European countries are lifting the COVID-19 restrictions because of the Omicron variant that has spread, and there is no urgency to put COVID-19 restrictions again. But the thing is, this may be a possible wide disruption for travel, especially for travel restrictions around the continent. I see this as a damp, as you said, because of the current storm that has disrupted a lot of travel. In the Netherlands alone, around 260 flights were cancelled because of this storm. So I think this is a round of another disruption to Europe, especially in the flight industry.
Thank you, Bassel. I think I concur with that assessment. We should see, as I mentioned, increased disruptions to travel, and yes, it's going to be it seems like a long winter in Western and most of Europe. I think that's Europe covered.
Thanks, everyone. Unless there's any last comments from you, Paul, I think we can call it a day. Listeners can contact us or reach out to us for any questions or queries that they may have. But have a good day, and we'll see you later in the week.